Yes.
Sirens
Yeah.
in Greek myths were
Mhm.
seen as beautiful, attractive, and evil.
Yes.
But the stories were not told in a way that was designed to titillate you and make you desire the sirens. It was meant to teach you to be afraid of things that use beauty to attract people. Well, I mean, I think they were trying to moralize and show that other people will use, like, seduce you for evil purposes.
Well, which is just stole your penis while you were asleep or something. It wasn't like they seduced your penis.
I thought, like, look, I don't know, it could be a rumor, but some people are saying there's a few women in this town that steal penises. I feel like
let's put together commission, people. We need to investigate.
Look, I know it's probably not true, but better safe than sorry, right, guys?
Safe than sorry. Am I right?
I mean, look, that old crony panhandler lady, does she really contribute that much to the economy? Is it worth risking our penises? In this ultra-lefty mindset, ugly meant morally good.
Yeah.
Beautiful meant morally evil. However, these people are still humans, right? And they still are more aroused by things that are beautiful. So they need to uglify them within a context.
Holy smokes.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today we are going to discuss an interesting phenomenon, and it is interesting both in how lazily people dismiss it as a phenomenon.
Okay.
And in its implications for both our current culture, our evolutionary history, and humanity more broadly. Specifically, what I am talking about here is the modern phenomenon of evil things, or things that were historically evil, being coded as sexy. Whether it's vampires or werewolves or witches. And the first thing people will say is, of course evil things are sexy.
But they weren't always.
Is sexy. And I'll note two things. One, patently not true. We discuss it in our book. We'll get to the forbidden sexy wrongness. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
And then two, it wasn't always the case. In most cultures throughout history, even our own, evil wasn't sexy until like the 80s, maybe? Like, okay, take something like vampires, right?
Yeah, original Dracula was not a snack.
Well, not just that, but you look at the revitalization of vampires with Nosferatu, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the popular vampire of, when was Nosferatu popular?
But also Dracula himself was not attractive per my memory, like in the book, in Bram Stoker's book, and in, of course, the original old movies. Was Interview with a Vampire really the first movie to sexualize vampirism?
Yeah, I think Interview was, well, so keep in mind, Interview with a Vampire was done off of a book that had already become popular that was sexualizing vampires.
Yeah.
So as much as a culture nerd as I am, I wasn't going to trust my off-the-head memory of, was there any mainstream sexually charged vampire movies before Interview with a Vampire? So I went to AI to ask, and I got 2 mainstream sexually charged vampire movies, or this is, I guess it shows how mainstream this was before this. One was the 1970s The Vampire Lovers. This Hammer horror film explicitly portrayed lesbian vampires and was quite sexually charged for its time. And then the 1972 Blackula. This blaxploitation film featured a suave, sexually appealing vampire protagonist.
Yes, I only hunt Blackulas. Man, I specialize in hunting black vampires. I don't know what the PC name for that is.
And I'm sure you can tell these are not at all cultural phenomenons in the way that Interview with a Vampire was. So it does appear that Interview with a Vampire was the cultural inflection point to sexy vampires being a mainstream concept. But yeah.
No, vampires were sexualized. There was a scene, for example, in the original Dracula book by Bram Stoker, in which women vampires in Dracula's castle were like, I don't know, kind of leering at
But here is the thing about the Bram Stoker Dracula sexualization of evil. Is it was very similar to like Sirens historically. Sirens in Greek myths were seen as beautiful, attractive, and evil.
Yes.
But the stories were not told in a way that was designed to titillate you and make you desire the sirens. It was meant to teach you to be afraid of things that use beauty to attract people. If you look at modern iterations of this, they are not treated like the sirens of old. It is about glorifying the raw sexuality associated with some acts of evil, as we see in Interview with a Vampire. And this is also a really interesting thing of this phenomenon. I mentioned this to someone and they're like, oh, well, you know, Twilight, because this is what they go to in this generation. They're like, Twilight, you know, they're not really that evil, right? Like, they don't, like...
Well, there are the good vampires, and there are the evil vampires. It depends on what faction you're in.
The movie that really created this genre, I would say, like really set it in stone, was, it's not the first. I don't know, was Dusk Till Dawn before this?
Let's see if you taste as good as your brother.
You.
It also had Sexy Vampire, but was Interview with a Vampire. And Interview with a Vampire, these guys are unmitigatedly evil, killing innocent children evil, enjoying killing random people for fun evil.
Claudia! What have you done?
What you told me to do!
Leave a corpse here to rot?
I wanted her! I wanted to meet her!
She's not!
Glad I made you what you are. You'd be dead now if I hadn't. Like that damned corpse. Now get rid of it!
You get rid of it.
There is no genuine redemption of them as any sort of a good thing. Outside of they care for other vampires sometimes and with conditions. That is the totality of their plot development as characters, okay? And I would note, this is not me shitting on the movie. I actually love Interview with a Vampire. I think it's fantastic.
It's long. But everyone in it's really good. Young Kirsten Dunst is amazing in it.
It's like Braveheart good. Like I consider it like a true classic level good. And I would note that in this period, you had other iterations of this. It wasn't just vampires, it was like witches as well. So, you know, somebody was like, well, you know, again, not evil. And I point out something like The Craft, right? The Craft was an early movie that really, really glorified the Wiccan movement.
You're a witch! They were right.
Nancy, come on, get off the bed, let's go. She's a witch too, you know. I mean, the only reason you're in love with her is because she cast a spell on you.
No.
Yes. Sad but true.
Nancy, get off the bed. Look, you scared the shit out of him. Thank you very much. Let's go.
No. He's gotta pay.
You're just jealous.
Jealous? You don't even exist to me.
You are nothing. You are shit. You don't exist.
Yeah.
But also unironically said that the Wiccan movement had an evil component to it.
Yes.
The core antagonist of the movie is one of the members. Or before The Craft, if you want to talk about like people are like, yeah, witches aren't sexy. Who said like people were trying to sexualize witches?
And I'm beautiful. Boys will love this.
Hey, Cupcake, don't I get your phone number, your area code? You want my route schedule?
Oh, thou wouldst hate me in the morning.
No, I wouldn't.
Oh, believe me, thou wouldst.
Party pooper.
Hocus Pocus.
What?
Hocus Pocus. These are unironically evil witches, and
Yeah.
it is they
But
kill
only
children.
only one of them is sexualized.
But she's really sexualized. and not in a way where she is like a siren sexualized, where the sexuality is seen as something.
No, she's just
very
dumb blonde
avoided.
sexualized. Yeah.
And you
yeah.
can contrast that with earlier representation of witches, even in fairly modern periods, like what's the one I'm thinking of here? Witches, right? That's what it's called.
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
movie
yeah,
and
yeah. They were all gross and
by Roald
scary.
Dahl.
The doors! Are they locked and bolted? Miserable witches. You're a good-for-nothing world! Everywhere I look, I see the repulsive sight of hundreds of revolting little children. I ask you, why? One child a week is no good to me? We will do better. There is no good either. My orders are every single child eliminated. Do I make myself clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is not an ounce of sexuality in those witches.
No, yeah, no, they're extremely first they're Karens and then they're witches. There's nothing sexual there.
No, I actually love that. Karens are all witches. Just assume all Karens are witches. That is the takeaway of witches. Just
Thanks,
imagine
Mr. Doll.
every Karen you ever meet is secretly a witch and stay away from her. And people might dismiss this. They might be like, well, that was a children's movie and the protagonists of that were children. So how could
So
they
was Hocus
sexualize
Pocus.
witches?
Oh my
and
gosh.
I'm like, Hocus Pocus, mother.
And Hocus Pocus is also like quite. I don't know if it could have been made today because actually the bigger sexual theme is with the adolescent male protagonist
being a virgin.
It will raise the spirits of the dead when lit by a virgin on Halloween night. What happened?
A virgin lit the candle. And he's a virgin.
Oh, no, being also super hot for the female like of his like female co-lead, I guess, the girl at his high school.
Yeah.
First he hits on her and she turns him down, and then finally, they start their misadventure with his little sister in tow, who, to embarrass her older brother, points out how her older brother comments on her. What did she call them? Like Kazanga's boob, like something. Like she talks about like the words that he uses to describe her boobs.
By the way, Danny, I love your costume.
I really like yours too. I couldn't wear anything like that because I don't have any, what do you call them, Max? Yabos? Max likes her yabos. In fact, he loves them.
And then she also imitates him masturbating to her in the movie.
Really?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. So it's a little racy. It's a little racy.
Wait, if you had known that a guy had masturbated to you in high school, like what would your reaction to that be?
An eye roll, I guess.
Yeah, like okay.
But it's just I'm just pointing out how racy that movie was. One thing that I want to square with you though on this whole, witches used to be not sexy, was also still the interplay of evil with sex. Now, Dracula wasn't sexy, but he would enter women's rooms at night and suck their blood. Witches weren't sexy, but they would steal your penis. And that was a big deal.
And historically speaking, you had things like succubi, you had things like incubus,
yeah,
which were, even during the medieval period, these were, if you look at medieval art, they were not supposed to be beautiful, but they used sexuality to seduce men.
Yeah, I guess was it just that then they were trying to moralize and show that sexuality is gross and yucky?
Well, I mean, I think they were trying to moralize and show that other people will seduce you for evil purposes.
Well, witches just stole your penis while you were asleep or something. It wasn't like they seduced your penis off.
Succubi and incubus would make you have like wet.
Yeah, but people, there were more materials about how do we deal with the witch problem and find witches than there were materials about how do we deal with the succubi.
I thought, like, look, I don't know, it could be a rumor, but some people are saying there's a few women in this town that steal penises. I feel like
let's put together a commission, people. We need to investigate.
Look, I know it's probably not true. But better safe than sorry, right, guys?
Safe than sorry. Am I right?
I mean, look, that old crony panhandler lady. Does she really contribute that much to the economy? Is it worth risking our penises? So
no, but how do you square this? How do you square that close association with evil and sexuality in the past, despite the fact that these people weren't presented as attractive?
Because it's not the same thing. Sirens to sexuality, incubi and succubus to sexuality were purely malevolent and to be avoided. They were not dark and attractive. And here we need to talk about the misconception. Banned things are attractive. Okay?
Yes.
Myth. In the Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality, it's a complete myth. You can look at correlations around how banned an activity is to how likely it is to turn somebody on, and there's basically almost no correlation. The mistake that people make here is they think about the things that turn them on that they're not allowed to talk about, and all of those things are banned. And then they assume banned things turn them on. So let me give an example here, right? Fire, right? Or jumping off a cliff. Like, these are things that are banned for good reasons, like jumping in a fire or jumping off a cliff.
Okay.
There's no community that these things turn on, right? Or, okay, think about something that's like actively like super shamed. Like digging up a dead body and having sex with it, right? Like, to you, the average viewer, that is a super banned thing. Do you have any desire to do that? Like, has it ever crossed your mind that that would be a hot thing to do, despite how banned it is? No. The idea that the level to which something is banned is correlated with how hot it is a fiction created by people who are just thinking about what turns them on that they're not allowed to talk about and how banned those things are, instead of correlating all banned activities to sexual profiles. So that doesn't explain it. I think you, Simone, got part of it here. The part of it is that these things were already tied to sexuality. But they hadn't been morally elevated as okay to be tied to sexuality yet.
Oh, so you think this correlates with societal comfort with sexuality in general? Because that's kind of what happened around this, like starting at the 60s, sexuality became more okay. That is one thing that did change.
I actually think it's tied to something we have talked about in other episodes, which is the inversion of moral frameworks. So let's talk about this.
Okay.
In the past, if you go to the 80s and 90s, the way the right, which was the dominant cultural force in America at that time, motivated its voters was with a disgust-based moral framework. Things that disgust you are morally reprehensible and bad. We've talked about this a lot in our disgust to cringe to vitalism framework video. I don't need to go further on how this framework died out or anything like that. Watch our video on it if that's what you're interested in. But the origins of wokeness were brewing in this time period. And you see this in movies like Starship Troopers, which we'll talk about. One of our best videos ever made is the Starship Troopers video we did, where we argued that it's actually the best argument for conservative values ever made, specifically because it was made by a progressive. But during this time, progressives reacted to this by saying, well, if they think disgusting is the sign of something's evilness, then I'm going to think disgust is a sign of something's goodness, right?
Okay.
And this is why Vanderhoeven, when he was making Starship Troopers, He's like, I assumed everyone would know it was fascist and evil because I chose only attractive actors.
Right.
And you're like,
Whoops.
wait, what? You thought attractive actors were a sign of obvious evil? But in his world, even back then, in this ultra-lefty mindset, ugly meant morally good.
Yeah.
Beautiful meant morally evil. However, these people are still humans, right? And they still are more aroused by things that are beautiful. So they need to uglify them within a context.
Holy smokes. Okay, I see where you're going with this. How fascinating.
But it gets more interesting than that. At the same time as this inversion began to come about, a secondary inversion began to come about, which is the moral sanctity of a group was not determined by their actions or their ideology. It was determined by how weak they were.
Oh.
And we saw this once when people were talking about how they knew that we were bad guys. They say, you are bad guys. You must be white supremacists because you name your kids with Roman names like Octavian. And I'm like, the Romans conquered my people, buddy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, the Romans, I do not consider them a white ethnic group, first of all. They were a Mediterranean ethnic group that conquered the Northern European ethnic groups. But they did great things, okay? They are, for me, worthy of admiration, even if they conquered my savage ancestors.
The angle of the arrow wounds show the man is isolated and shot from close range. The evidence leaves McKinley with little doubt why the man's life is taken.
To be buried in that ditch at Stonehenge with the injuries he has suggests we have a sacrificial victim.
Prepare to defend the eagle!
Because of their cultural, technological, philosophical, and literary accomplishments, because of their ability to exercise military force on their neighbors in a civilizing way. That is something worthy of admiration in my perspective, right? But to them, the opposite is true. When they look for groups to lionize, they will look at, you know, like we had with whatever was her name, like Bambi Slaughter or Savage Bambi or something. In the Eurovision, the one who was all like anti-Israel and was a witch and like, I'm a witch and I'm queer.
What makes me special? Come on! Come on! Do you know what makes me special? I'm a queer. And I'm a witch!
She looks angry.
Yeah. Face like that, I'd be angry too. You shut up.
And you see this, they genuinely do, in the way that they retell history, always lionize the weaker party. The weaker party was the just party. You know, you look at early American history and you look at all the, I will say that it was a very morally complicated time, but I think to frame, for example, the settlers as just a morally negative force in their interactions with the Native Americans is anti-historic. There were good Native American tribes from a modern moral perspective.
Or you could put it differently. You could say there were peaceful or more peaceful.
There were more peaceful tribes, and then tribes that were dramatically more savage than the colonists.
Yeah.
And yet that's just not talked about. It's not talked about how many colonist children were raped and murdered. It's not talked about how many of them were skinned, because what is scalping other than being skinned alive? It's not.
Well, there were worse things that they did. There were much worse things that they did.
Oh, yes. Pulling them apart with clamshells. Remember that one?
Yeah, the clamshell thing is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, they took clamshells and nipped off their skin until they died.
No,
So-
it was a little different than that. But it was something about clamshells while you're alive, and then something else bad happens, and I think it mostly involved being skinned alive. Well, let's look this.
Yeah. The point being is that history is morally complex, but generally when I'm looking to the groups I'm lionizing, I'm looking to the groups that won in a historic context. I'm looking to the groups that produced more philosophical works, that produced more technological works, and that ultimately were able to, through multiple measures, have their culture survive, right? And again, these aren't necessarily my ancestors. My ancestors were conquered and civilized by the Romans, not the other way around. Okay, look at my skin. I'm not a descendant of Romans. I can look at my 23andMe. I'm not a descendant of Romans. Yet I respect them. I respect the ancient Greeks. I respect the ancient Egyptians even. I respect the ancient Persians. When I read something, probably the closest ancient work to my ancestors is what's that dumb work, Beowulf. Beowulf is retarded. It is not something that I would lionize at all. It's boring. It doesn't have interesting messages in it. It is the work of a savage people. What were you going to say, Simone?
I'm just looking up how the Powhatan tribe typically used torture in their conflicts.
But where this gets interesting is in a modern context. So in a modern context, you see something like the lefties supporting Hamas, right?
Yeah.
And I literally think that the driver of this support is the group's weakness when contrast with their rival. Because you look at Israel. Israel's like the most pro-LGBT state in the Middle East. They are the most diverse state in the Middle East in terms of like actual, and people can be like, well, you know, there's other diverse states. Yeah, there's other diverse states where like the outsiders are basically treated like slaves, you know, whether you're talking about like Qatar or the UAE. But no, Israel isn't like that. There might be slight differences based on, you know, whether or not you are Jewish or Muslim, but it is nothing compared to the rest of the Middle East. Nothing, nothing, nothing. This is a beacon of everything the left says that they value, and yet they denigrate it. And they rise up, the people who are throwing LGBT people off roofs, who say that their plan is to systemically eradicate an entire ethnic group, you know, from the river to the sea. And by the way, the Arab version of that phrase is from the river to the sea, only Arab. Like it's very clear, like the way that this has been whitewashed.
Well, but with Jewish slaves, let's not forget that necessary element of the plan.
The original plan was that they would enslave the Jewish people, at least the technically competent ones, and then just kill any of the ones that were involved in the war. They wouldn't be allowed to live free, of course. They would live, you know, they are genuinely monsters, genuinely monstrous. And people can be like, well, the people of Gaza are not Hamas. And I'm like, yeah, well, the people of Gaza both voted for Hamas at a higher rate than the people of Germany voted for the Nazi Party. And they support Hamas at a higher rate than the people of Germany supported the Nazi Party.
To that one hapless subscriber of this podcast who's now become an instant unsubscriber who supports Palestine.
No, there was one person
Sorry.
who was like, I support Palestine, and I was kicked off of Reddit for supporting Palestine, so I'm based. And you know, he's wrong to say that like Kamala Harris is more fascist than Donald Trump. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, but it's this moral inflection that we see on the left, which I find really, really fascinating. What are your thoughts before I go further?
This makes a lot of sense. At least it clicks into the broader theory of, oh, everyone, like characters, kids' book illustrations, all these people have been made progressively uglier and weaker over time, that is supposed to be equated with good, that some people even see it as a perversion of Christian values, that the meek shall inherit the earth, and that, you know, being strong and wealthy is a bad thing, which I don't know. I could see that sort of being how some people justify this theme. It fits in very neatly with that philosophy, and that to be powerful, to be strong, to be wealthy, to be sexy is to be evil. So it would make sense that evil characters are monsters and sexy, and that we still want sexy and beautiful. So we just watch them.
I'm actually going to reframe this for you, because I think that you, I do not think that, one, this is definitely not downstream of Christianity. Anyone who says that is just insane. It's downstream of a reaction against disgust-based morality. But when you, well, and the moral system of wokeism, which is to say all differences between populations are primarily due to discrimination. And that being the case, the more a group is out competing other groups, the more evil they are at an intrinsic level. This is why leftism always ends in anti-Semitism, because Jewish populations, for cultural reasons, outcompete their neighbors. And so it's always going to lead to them denigrating that population, because there is no explanation for group differences other than discrimination. Or, you know, Asian populations, we did our Asians aren't actually that much smarter video, but Asian teens study on average 11 more hours a week than white teens. Yet that cannot be within the urban monoculture's explanation or justification for allowing a disproportionately Asian population to get into our university system or to get into positions of power, because there can be no explanation for group differences other than oppression. And when that is discrimination and unfair rigging of the system in one group's favor, and so when that's taken into account, well, now you have this framework where powerful is a genuine and honest signal of evil. And, oh God, there was a secondary point I really wanted to make here. How does this relate to vampires, which is everything like that, right?
Okay.
If you, as a vampire, have to be worried about the public finding out who you are, right? It doesn't matter that you kill innocent people. All right? It doesn't matter the effects that has on other people. It doesn't matter. Because you are not in control, because you are afraid about your identity being revealed, all moral acts are excusable and a sign of personal defiance, and honest and good defiance. To the extent where I think you see this reflected in Hamas, right? It doesn't matter that you grape children. It doesn't matter that you behead babies. It doesn't matter that you, and by the way, to the progressives who think that story was a myth, no, it was the number of babies that was beheaded that was being talked about. There was baby beheading definitely happening. Because you gang graped people to death, you know, that doesn't mean anything, because you are the weaker one. So you get to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it, and that is morally justifiable. And so I think that is where you get this covered. But I think we want to talk about a secondary thing here, which is really interesting, which is the way that progressive women have begun to relate to dominance due to overly sexualizing themselves. We've talked about this in other episodes, but it appears that there would have been two core sexual strategies women could opt into in a historic context. One is for monogamous relationships, but the other is if you are a sex slave being passed around. This happened a lot in a historic context. We see it in both literature sources and from DNA records. And you would likely need to not hate that that's happening to you if you're going to survive. And how does your body know which situation it's in? It knows based on how many partners you have. And we have mentioned based on Ayla's data, we see this in her data as well. The more partners somebody has as a female, the more they're into violence-based sexuality. And so part of what we might be seeing here is a preference for violence-based sexuality due to the promiscuity of the female population. And this is an outlet to engage with morally sanctified violence-based sexuality. That's one thing, right? But then the second thing is I think women don't know how to relate to dominance anymore. If you see moral dominance, i.e. a male who is just a dominant, caring figure who helps you and open doors for you and is there for you, as a sign of some sort of moral failing, as many do, right? So you cannot be aroused by, you know, astronaut Mike Dexter. because he's a bad guy, right? Like he plays by the rules. How do you, where bad guy is defined by what I think you and I would call a generically good and well-mannered man.
Right.
You need to find other outlets, and they find that in this denigration by these ethereal characters.
Okay. So evil being sexy is also a product of changing norms around female sexuality, causing women to be more sexually, what's the word? Promiscuous. That's the word. And that promiscuity leads them to be aroused by less friendly, committed partners. Therefore, in media, we're seeing an increase of dark triad traits and evilness being what people are turning to sexually, what women are turning to sexually out of interest. And I guess when it comes to the sexy and evil nexus, it does seem to be more of a male characters thing than a female characters thing.
Yeah, you get a few female characters, but it's definitely lower. Actually, I'd say that it's the crazy sexy metric, which is more what female evil is associated with. The two characters here being Harley before she was made gross, and Jinx.
Catwoman a little bit too, at least in the Tim Burton version, which is the best and only version that we should be concerned with, because I love it so
best
much.
and only Catwoman.
Thought of busting Batman makes me feel all dirty.
Gotta go. Girl talk.
Oh, I forgot I'm not married.
And Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed up like Batman?
Because he is Batman, you moron.
Well, that was very brief. Just like all the men in my life.
The so-called normal guys who always let you down. Sickos never scare me. At least they're committed.
Amazing. Tim Burton.
There can only be one
Batman
Catwoman.
2, definitely top tier cinema, one of the best films ever made. And I really mean that. I do think it's one of the best films ever made.
Wow, so this has two. Okay, so Tim Burton's Batman and Interview with the Vampire. I mean, there's a lot of good films out there. But those are good.
No, there aren't anymore, okay? The young generation needs to learn that there was a time when people made good films. And that time has long passed.
Yeah, that may be a good different episode in terms of quality changing over time. Because I was just thinking about it the other day while cleaning out our attic. Like, wow, I better hold on to this. Like, we don't have a need for it right now, but the versions of this that are constructed now that I can buy now are lower quality. A suitcase in this case, and also some garments. And when it comes to clothing, even when it comes to media, books, movies, supplies, backpacks, appliances, even cars in some cases, the quality that we're getting, and of course, designer luxury goods as well. Like, Louis Vuitton used to be something that was consistently very, very high quality. Now, you buy a lot of clothes from couture designers, supposedly, and they will fall apart after the same number of wears that something from Banana Republic or Primark will. It's sad. So yeah, I see what you're saying there, and I think that's a broader theme too, is that it's weird that as culture, per our view at least, has degraded, which is not the fault per se of progressive values or being left-leaning. It's the fault of a super virus that has taken over that movement and parasitized it. But the degradation of culture has also correlated so highly with the degradation of clothing quality, food quality, in some instances, building quality. Think about houses built today, media quality, book quality, video game quality, as we discussed in another episode. It's interesting.
You're absolutely right. And I think that this degradation can only be resisted through certain types of social resets is what we really need to hope for.
It's not going to be AI, because what people have pointed out with AI, which I think is really astute, is that people expect revolutions to be often in the form of some fundamentally new or different product or service, when sometimes the revolution takes place in something becoming mass produced and a lot less expensive to the average person. So quality is actually worse on average, but now everyone can access it. Like I just watched a really interesting YouTube video on how the Bic pen revolutionized literacy because for the first time, a non-quill based pen and an affordable pen became available to the masses. They could actually write more, which is interesting. And I think this is because it's a much more subtle thing that's happening, something, you know, becoming affordable and also just not that great. It doesn't seem that impactful, but it's intensely impactful. Think about, like, I think airline flight's similar, right? You know, airline flight used to be for what you could get at the time, you know, highly luxurious, you know, really, really quote unquote high quality. And now you're kind of in like a Greyhound bus in the sky, wedged in with a bunch of people. But so many people can access it now. Maybe fewer than it used to be because it's so expensive, but still. So that's interesting. And I wonder, yeah, this seems to be one of those things, but not the only thing. Does any of this connect and correlate to the sexy X Halloween costume? Like, sexy?
Halloween is the one night a year when a girl can dress like a total slut and no other girls can say anything about it. The hardcore girls just wear lingerie and some form of animal ears.
Duh.
Unfortunately, no one told me about the slut rule, so I showed up like this.
Hey! Why are you dressed so scary?
It's Halloween.
No, I actually think that's a totally different phenomenon. I think that was just people realize, oh, I can dress however I want during Halloween.
So I'm going to be sexy, but I have to be scary.
No, it was that they realized I can dress however I want during Halloween, even beyond normal sexual mores, i.e. rules that would normally say you can't wear that at school, you can't wear that at a party. Well, they don't apply at Halloween. So why not cheese how sexy I'm being if those rules around modesty don't apply on this particular day?
That's interesting. Yeah, one thing that I can't square with my past self is why I wore such revealing clothing despite being so physically self-conscious. I don't know how.
Why did you? Did you wear revealing clothing? I don't remember.
I wore mini skirts. So there was that.
Did?
Yeah, I did.
Ooh.
Yeah. Like mini skirts and thigh-high stockings was like one of my
what
go-to staples from, we'll say, age 15 to 26, like a little after I met you. I started dressing conservative after I met you.
You actually, I seem to remember this a little bit. You didn't look very good in miniskirts.
No, I didn't, but I still
not like
wore them.
Tempting on you.
No, I have like stocky legs. I don't like my legs, but I'm a woman. Like women don't like a lot of elements of their body.
It doesn't. You're not.
He's going in for the save, ladies and gentlemen.
No, hold on.
You're digging the hole deeper, Malcolm.
The miniskirt sexy look synergizes with crazy, unhinged, or bubbly. It does not synergize with calculating, calm, cool, reasonable, collective hotness.
Yeah, but I was playing the manic pixie dream girl trope before I met you, so
not well, Simone.
Yeah, I know, Malcolm.
You did not come off when I met you. I did not think manic pixie's dream girl. I was like, oh, this girl is desperate to have somebody to.
That's just because I thought you were amazing. You don't understand.
So you're saying I didn't come off like other days.
Yeah, no, definitely not. No, definitely not. I was turning people away and trying to get out of all my other dates. And then I met you and was a little too thirsty, apparently. But yeah, I it's odd to me that young women want to reveal so much of their bodies when, at least if they're anything like me or anything like they signal publicly, they're very self-conscious about elements of their bodies.
Do you remember the decision that went into doing that? Did you think that people would respond more positively?
No, it wasn't. It was never about other people. And I think people get so confused when they think that women dress and put on makeup for other people. And that's so not true. They put it on for themselves. I thought they were cute, I guess. And I saw them on other people and I thought they looked cute on other people. So it was like, wanted to be in on that. But it wasn't
cute on you, is it? You wanted to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, "Ooh, you're so
sexy." A lot of it's more, and you can see this in how many women choose to dress. They see stuff that they think is pretty, and they put it on them. They're not thinking about how they look on it. They're thinking about how the thing looks or how it looks on a model. And they're like, this pretty thing. Like, I want, our daughter Titan does this. She'll find stuff that's pretty and she'll put it on her. And it's not because she thinks it's going to look good. She's like, like, I will accessorize with this pan on my head.
How do you counteract this instinct in young women, culturally speaking?
Well, I think young women who grow up on camera and have terrible family influencer parents see themselves so much that I think they realize real quick what they actually look like. I grew up in an age when having images of me was still kind of unusual, so I didn't necessarily know what I looked like. And so I think, and especially now, because even just, I take so many pictures of our kids, and we have a family album that like plays in our house on our screens. I think our kids just seeing themselves in our family album would be probably enough for them to see whether or not they were pulling off a look. I also think that our family is going to be well known for editorializing on anyone's non-uniform wear and just having like cruel commentary. So
I'm okay with that.
Having siblings does, I think, help. In fact, I know fewer people who had siblings, like a lot of them, and have terrible fashion taste.
Oh, true that, yeah.
Because I think you just get ruthlessly bullied when you look like a doofus and you have a lot of siblings.
That is actually true. I've noticed that.
What was that?
One of the pumpkins fell.
That sounded like glass shattering.
Well, it shattered.
Oh.
It was one of the light up pumpkins.
I know. It's okay.
Anyway, love you to death, Simone. You are amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you for being my wife. And I think we have to go get the kids now.
Yeah, I love you. Oh, by the way, I realized something on the subject of super stimuli and social media, and also different things that get to different genders. There is a super stimuli genre on TikTok and other shorts-based platforms that disproportionately seems to attract women. And it is the genre of restock videos that are often marketed as ASMR as well, but they're all marketed as restock. And this is, you basically just see
what a restock video is. I don't know this term.
It's fascinating. It is, typically you as a viewer are just seeing hands restocking anything. So common restock videos are of refrigerators, freezers, even ice trays.
Male hands or female hands?
Female hands always, because this is a female genre. People are restocking their Stanley cups. People are restocking their guest bathrooms, their powder rooms, their bathrooms, their pantries. And what they're doing is you're just seeing hands sometimes cleaning out the thing first, like a purse or a fridge or a closet. And then they are restocking it with brand new products in quick succession, very fast cuts, sometimes tapping on bottles or whatever for the ASMR part. But I'm realizing that it is very much, and because I see even our daughter Titan doing it, and I do it all the time, I think that there's a female instinct towards squirreling things away. Like, I'm putting my little food stores in my little box and it's safe now, and like packing and being ready. And I've got all my stuff in my purse.
They do that with jewelry too. They get these little fancy jewelry boxes and they put the jewelry in the little box with fingers in the other box. Oh, I've seen it.
No. You haven't. I'll send you like a compilation of restock videos, and you'll see that they've basically on social media, there's been this evolution of a super stimuli of this, because people have found organically over time that when they take video of themselves restocking, people's like women's eyes dilate and they're just like, I need to see more of this. And there are people who all they do, and they have millions of views, is just restock their fridges. In fact, fridge restock videos and shorts are so big now that there are even people who are trying to find their niche by doing themed restocks. like
wait, what?
Yeah, like Bridgerton themed fridge restock, where like everything in it's like.
Wait, what would a Bridgerton fridge restock look like?
It would look like first taking everything out of your fridge and then putting everything back in your fridge, but in really girly containers, and also putting little like flowers everywhere in your fridge.
Bridgerton, like about the past?
Yes, Bridgerton is a Regency era romance fantasy show
Why
on
would
Netflix.
they have little containers? They use Regency themed containers?
No, it's just there's no logic to this. Is corn as
I
we
forgot.
say.
It's women. It's women. Okay. Yes,
if we combine one super stimuli with another, which is historical romances, that must equal sales. But then there's also like summer themed, and like when people do ice tray restocks, for example, they have purchased tons of different expensive silicone based ice molds, and then they've made tons of different themes of ice. Like this is smoothie ice, this is Kahlua ice, this is tiramisu themed cold brew coffee ice cubes, and then they just put them all into freezer and of course most of these things involve buying lots of little plastic trays, and you're unloading packaged goods into these little trays in a way that looks really neat and organized. You'll see it's a whole genre, but I think it's really fascinating as a female super stimuli. And it is absolutely the same as like a very, very busty woman on Pornhub. It is pushing the same kind of button, in that there's some deep evolutionary like this correlates with my survival, and it's fascinating to me, this genre, that it even creeps into like my Instagram feed, and I find myself watching it and thinking, oh, it's bad, but it's also so good. Anyway, let's get to the podcast.